And let's go. So welcome everybody to our final installment, at least, of our weekly webinar here at Wellness Innovate. And you know, we've already had a few comments about that, and everything is just fine on our end. With summer, obviously, and we all know that Alberta summers, I mean, it's basically gone before you finish your blink. And so we wanted to make sure that all of you have some time to rest. We will be running one key webinar once a month for July and August, and then hope to get back in action in September. But we've had a really incredible time where we've really had, you know, the privilege of talking to lots of leaders and influencers and organizations. And so today we're really thrilled to have Jim, well, actually, you know, a couple of representatives from the Dream Centre. So why don't we just have Connie, welcome Connie, and why don't you go ahead and introduce our very special guests today.
Well, we are very excited to introduce you to the Executive Director of the Dream Centre, Jim Moore. Has been working as a businessman for many years and who's a dreamer who sees impossible situations and decides, I don't think it needs to be impossible. That's Jim. And I loved, I don't know if anyone got a chance to read the article that was posted about the Dream Centre this week, but my favorite story that you tell, Jim, is when you went up to the hotel owner and said, look, would you like to keep taking clothes off women or put clothes on men? And he said, let's make a deal. Isn't that beautiful? That's Jim. That just describes Jim right there. And right next to him is Craig Hill, who leads the campaign that you're going to hear more about. Craig is a very good friend of ours. He was at our wedding. He is our pastor. He is just an incredible friend. And you're going to get a chance to hear how he is pivoting so well in a time when everyone is just wondering, how do we overcome this? What do we do? How are we going to create funding? These guys are doing it. And so we just want to just jump right in. Tell us a little bit. We'll get into what the Dream Centre does. But could you tell us a little bit about what happened when COVID hit? Did you get worried? Did you wonder about where your funding was going to come from? Could you tell us a little bit of the story?
Yeah, Craig and I are looking at each other. The story is, shall we say, new, because nobody in the world, I don't think, has experienced anything like this in our lifetime. And so you have to sort of dig into your tool chest and experience over a number of years. And because I'm a young guy, I've had a few experiences over the last number of years, both in Vancouver, Toronto, and Calgary, not only as a businessman and owner of real estate companies and very entrepreneurial spirit, and also then in the banking business. What I found is that my experience sort of preloaded my ideas and creativity for such a time as this. There's a lot of individuals that when this epidemic hit, there's a number of things that happen. Get paralyzed. You sit by and you wait for government help, because government funding is all part of nonprofit. Or you go into your entrepreneurial tool chest and then you start saying, what can we do to pivot? And one of the first things that we did is you have to act very fast. Whether you're opening a company or closing a company, if you sit and wait, the cash flows keep on moving. Your rent keeps on going. Everything is still on full forward, and then you have to pivot as fast as you possibly can. Through pivoting, what I've learned in the past is if you're opening a business or closing a business, you have to think strategically, and you have to move quickly. So the first thing I did was I took a look at our roster, and we went through and we decided that we have to protect our cash flow. Cash is king when things start to close down, because all our events were canceled. All our contracts were canceled. The government put mandates on us that really shrunk the opportunities to even do some intake and to wear masks and do PPE and get things in order to then start trying to right situations. And when we started 18 years ago, we had 12 clients, and today we have something like 371 clients. How are we going to protect our clients from COVID-19? How are we going to survive? How are we going to treat our employees properly? How are we going to? So there was a lot of why questions, Craig, and then that's when we decided that we can't wait, we got to move. And through moving, with all our events closed and everything else shut down, many years ago, I was in a breakfast meeting, and there was an Australian businessman that came in to Calgary, and I was invited to the breakfast. And he told me he was a consultant for large companies and or small companies. And his advice was always start putting away little bits of money so that for the rainy day fund and the storehouse. And if you go back and we'll take a look at even biblical principles, keep your storehouse well filled, because you might need to go in to that storehouse one day and be able to eat and be able to facilitate, be able to keep your, shall we say, business and family safe and rolling. And over the last 18 years, we did start putting little bits of money into a storehouse for such a day as this. So that then caused us to totally pivot, reevaluate, and we laid off a number of people. We exited some people, and then we started using what resources then would come our way. And the resources, I have to tell you, if you follow government mandates, government actually ordered us to be on calls 2 to 3 times a week. And then they would bring us up to date. And the interesting thing is, if you sit and wait for somebody else to look after you, that might be fine. But I think you've got to take the initiative to get out of paralyzed state. And Craig, this is where I Choose Hope campaign came in, and you saw this little gal. So maybe you should talk about that.
Well, Connie, you know better than anybody that I can talk at great length. So before I dive into that, just I'll hand it back to you, and anything you want to follow up with Jim on.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to hear, I think we all want to hear more about the I Choose Hope campaign, but one of the things that you said, Jim, and either of you can answer this, and Jim, you know, I have lots of experience in the nonprofit sector, and one of the things that has always troubled me is sort of this idea of over-reliance on government sources of funding. And of course, governments always have limitations, but not only that, I mean, a lot of extra rules and policies, because, you know, they are the public, and that's okay. But what do both of you see? Like, where's this going when it comes to the nonprofit sector? Do you think that we collectively are going to pivot and see a lot more creativity and more of an entrepreneurial spirit? Or do you think that nonprofits will continue to institutionalize almost and sort of become an edifice and an arm of government? What are your thoughts about that?
My thought is this, and I've also talked to the government about this. And we've had many visits from the government over the last few months, and probably calls at least once, one or two calls per week, and I'm listening. And what is interesting is we've tried not to be totally reliant on the government. We've opened social enterprise because of my past owning real estate companies, Dairy Queens, mortgage companies, and then working in the banking facility. I knew that, and then especially with all of the COVID-19 coming, and then all our contracts were shut down. Because I take a look at our space and I say, this space is valuable. How can I invite others into this space and then use that as funding to help fund our government from the government, but also supplement our funding. And what I found is that now 2 years ago, we started a wood shop, and the drop-in center went out of that business. And we were very fortunate for them to bless us with some equipment. And then we had donors that really believed in social enterprise and being entrepreneurial. And it's really amazing how that has blossomed. And we just finished a 40-desk build out for an architect in Calgary. And they want more things. And it seemed to fit in so nicely with COVID-19, simply because a lot of people then were working from home. So we had the opportunity then to start building furniture for houses and for homes, and the desks that go up and down, and beautiful pieces of wood. And the interesting thing is that we're using all the fellows that have either come through our programs or have had addiction in the past. And the fellow that's heading up our wood shop, for example, was very much, shall we say, in that area of getting his life turned around and into a sobriety way of living. And he's a very streetwise individual, working with motorcycle, shall we say, operatives, and doing things. And he is very, very entrepreneurial. But the facilities and what we've turned out has been really very starting to go to a mission, and that was seed that was planted in my heart. Even when I then started building, went to as president of Canada Trust real estate division, and my boss was in the banking business, and I've been in the banking business also. I found that at noon hours, I would go out of my office on Yonge Street and Bay Street, and I had my money, I had my pockets full of money. And when I entered back after lunch, I was broke. I had no money, because I went and I visited these people that were on the street being entrepreneurial in their own way, and really gained really a love and affection. And one thing is, in the nonprofit business, if you can get the passion for the business and for the clients that you serve, then all of a sudden it could become a job. So even when you're going out to corporations or donors or government, it is truly a passion to look after our clients and look after those kinds of individuals. And so that was the pivot point. We went into social enterprise, and we're continuing to look into what else can we build, what else can we do to supplement incomes from the government. And the government actually enjoys that kind of thinking, because so you're not totally reliant on the government. At the same time, the government is there, and they've been really good to the nonprofits during the COVID-19.
It's great.
I don't know about everybody else, but I just get so fueled when I hear this, because I feel like we forget how creative we are as human beings. We forget that what's in your hand, what do you see? Jim, you saw problems, you saw needs that needed to be met, and you also saw people. I love the story of you going out on Yonge Street and emptying your pockets, seeing these people who are doing brilliant things to do whatever they can. And I love that you're taking things that you already have. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're not, having to invest a whole lot of money into things. You have a wood shop. What can you do? Well, we can make furniture. This is brilliant. I just hope that everyone is getting ideas already. As Jim was talking, I hope that in your heart and in your mind, creative ideas were starting to percolate. We are entrepreneurial. A lot of people think, oh, I'm not entrepreneurial, I don't have any creative ideas, but you do inside. And it's really just what's in your hand and what do you see? And I love how you guys are responding to that with your I Choose Hope movement, Craig. Can you tell us a little bit about where that came from and what
Sure.
you're doing there?
I'd be happy to do that, Connie. I think to start with, there's even a little bit of backstory relating to Jim. I would like to slide a little off screen and just allow Jim to continue to share his life and experiences and wisdom. I have the unique privilege and opportunity to be watching something special happening around us, because this really is a convergence of convergences. So much of Jim's story and life experience, business practices have been used together. They're coming together. All of those, the trials, the victories, they're just, they're meant for good. And so much of what we're doing right now is because of Jim's life experience. And even one of the things that you've done here at the Dream Centre since the early days, you partnered with a radio station. You saw the importance of alignment. And I think that's a real key for everybody that might be listening, is the notion of being an entrepreneur, but being an independent agent. That's a really tricky way to go about it. There's so many strategic alignments and connections that will make the difference. And that there's a lot that could be spoken of about that, but I've watched, Jim, you recognize key people. And guys, one of the things that I want to say that Jim didn't mention, part of the reason that they're having success now is the seeds that were sown in years past. And that's really important for everybody on the call, because I know that there's probably a lot of very creative thinkers on this call, and people that are, the fact that you're here speaks to that. And Jim is reaping now some of the harvest from seed sown years ago. And I'll give one example. And Connie, I will talk about the I Choose Hope campaign. I sure will. But Jim, in the early days, you've always had a vantage point of not a closed-handedness and a what can I get out of this? But Jim's disposition has been, what can I give? Giving is one of the keys that unlocks creativity. It unlocks synergies. It brings relationships. And in the early days, I remember when this place started, you had a very large facility downstairs that was for the most part not being used. And instead of trying to rent and bring in revenue that way, you gave the space away. Can you talk about just for a moment how strategic that decision was with Calgary Homeless Foundation and just how that's benefited over the years?
I'm very humbled because Diane Cressy, who was the past president of the Calgary Homeless Foundation, recently she talked to a room full of our, shall we say, collaborative people that were our donors and our partners. And she said she remembered when the Homeless Foundation didn't have that much money either. And so I invited them in to put training facilities in the Dream Centre, and we didn't charge them, and it was all collaborative, and it all worked. And even nonprofits that didn't have enough funds to rent our facility for many years, we had the mental health and the addiction councils, and different councils come into the Dream Center. But I really believe is together we can do so much more. And that's what is so beautiful about the continuum of the nonprofits. Because, and the thing is about, if you go after government money, everybody's going after the same seemingly pot of money. So that's where the creative ability comes in. And I always remember Mark Cuban on Shark Tank saying, during difficult times, millionaires are made because they go out of themselves and they start to collaborate and they start to think and they start to say, what else can we do for people? And it's really surprising when you open your hands to individuals and to people and gather all the brain sets that are even on the call right now. You are privileged to be in our business because if any time, and I remember reading guerrilla marketing books and going through my real estate degree and banking and all kinds of things, and it was always remarked, and it came across this way: you can take away my factories, you can take away my land, you can take away my asset, but give me people. Because through people, we can develop so much more collaboratively when we all work together and put our hands out, and we can do so much more. And that's where then we really settled down. And then when Craig saw this little gal come and I Choose Hope campaign, we wanted to do, what can we do to help people get unparalyzed? How can we get them to get outside of themselves? How can we take the fear factor away? People losing jobs, people being shut in, people, shall we say, being isolated. And what's the, you know, when you talk about addiction and you talk about mental health, you know, what is the option, Craig, of addiction?
Well, this place teaches and has great success because the truth that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but it's connection. And that's a radical thought, but that's one of the key recipes of success that's happening in the recovery program that the Calgary Dream Centre has and is pioneering, really. And that speaks not just to the issue of addiction, but that's really what we're talking about in life. Not only is the opposite of addiction connection, but success is found in connection. I'll bet you I'm preaching to the choir right now. You would all probably know this. I remember, I think it was at the TELUS Convention Center. It might have been in 1992. And I went and I listened to Zig Ziglar here in Calgary. I had read his book, See You at the Top. I had highlighted, I was so impacted by Zig Ziglar, and I went and I listened to him. And one of the things that absolutely marked my world was when he talked about you can get everything you want out of life if you will just help enough other people get what they want out of life. I had read that. I heard him share it. I read it again. I thought about it. Mm-hmm. I can get everything I want out of life if I will just help enough other people get what they want out of life. And that marked me. And it made me realize one of the keys to success is looking at how I can serve and how I contribute. And if I do that well, the money isn't going to be an issue. And fast forward to COVID-19, and with the community that I influence and have the privilege of leading, I was sharing that in the midst of all that's going on right now, we can't ignore the challenges. I'm not suggesting for a second that we do that. But there is a message that it's going to be okay. And I was sharing that through all of this, regardless of how difficult, we're going to be okay. We're going to make it. And I shared that. And I got home that Sunday afternoon and I received a text. And this was from a little girl, an 8-year-old girl, took a photo of herself wearing a button that said, it's going to be okay. And it was sent to me and the mom and dad said, she got it. And I considered that and realized even though that wasn't the core of the message, that was what was being threaded throughout. And even a little girl grabbed hold of, it's going to be okay. And with that, I realized in this hour right now, was everything was just new to us, and all that was sort of coming upon us had us so uncomfortable and so insecure. Everybody is looking for a message of hope. And again, not to deny or ignore, but we saw the opportunity that in this moment, somebody needs to offer that light, be the lighthouse that's offering a message of hope. And how do we do this? And we realized it was as simple as the button that this little girl had taken a photo of. And long story short, we got buttons printed. The fund development team here came very quickly into alignment, and we realized we have an opportunity to really do two things in parallel. We can share a message of hope across the city. This is not for an organization. This is not for a church. This is not for a business. This is for every Calgarian. How do we communicate that it's going to be okay? And then in parallel to that, is there an opportunity to direct funds, to direct attention, to highlight the work that's being done through the Calgary Dream Centre? And with that, see in an hour that funds are being kind of constricted, to see funds flow. And both of those things began to happen. Today, if you would drive down many of the roads, Barlow Trail, McLeod Trail,
Memorial Drive,
you're going to see roadside signs saying it's I choose hope. You're going to see billboards saying I choose hope. Join the movement. And Connie, because this is something that's within all of us, Calgary's grabbed on. Calgary's taken hold, and there's just this sense of momentum, and the funds have begun to flow into the Calgary Dream Centre. But this is the point. In a dark hour, when all of the negativity was suggesting that it's time to just hunker down, hope for the best, Jim's lenses saw opportunity, and not opportunity to exploit, but opportunity to serve. And the opportunity was to become a light in a dark moment and to bring hope where despair was trying to settle in. So with that, we've been delighted and surprised and somewhat overwhelmed at all the momentum and the traction. And as I've mentioned, the resources have kind of followed. The vision was right, motivated by a right heart, and the money came as a result of that.
And the actual movement itself, I mean, we have a sign on our front lawn, I choose hope. And, you know, it's interesting to watch people walk by our house and see what people's reactions to that, because it's just there. It's just out of the blue, and it's bright yellow, so you can't miss it. And it's not just a message of hope, like you said. It's something that is stirring something up. You're giving something away. You're giving, right? And I love Seth Godin is my favorite marketing guy to go to. And he always talks about creating culture, talks about people like us do things like this. And I feel like something like an I Choose Hope, you're serving our city with this hopeful message, but it's also, you're like you said, it's a win-win, but your motivation has come from such a deeper place than just creating funds. And I think if people remember what's really important, why do we get into this work? Why do we do what we do? Do we wake up in the morning because we like to fundraise? I don't know about you, but that's not why I wake up. That makes me want to sleep in. It doesn't motivate. But what gets us up is it was the people, it was the cause, it was the things in our hearts that we want to see change happen. And there's people on this call, there's people watching on Facebook right now who've had dreams ignited in their heart, and COVID has sucked the dream right out. And this is an infusion again, to dream again, rise up again, begin to labor again, serve somebody. And like you mentioned, Jim has been doing this for a very long time, which encourages me and also makes me tired to think about it. We got to show up for the long haul. It's not just, hey, I'm going to give 3 months of my life. No, this is a commitment to show up for life and to keep showing up. And we just honor you, Jim, for that. We honor you for what you've done. Honor you, Craig, for your courageous spirit inside of you and how you both are serving the city. Abe, did you have anything that you wanted to ask?
Well, I'm thinking about, like hope, and I like the fact that, it is a choice, isn't it? Right. I mean, all through history, we're not the first. I know that we've all commented that COVID is unprecedented, but as sort of humanity, we're not the first who's ever seen adversity. We're not the first who's ever seen hardship, and we're not the first who have actually looked up and wondered, is there hope? And yet we've had to make that decision. And so, on a practical level, for somebody who might be listening right now, and I'm sure the message resonates with all of us, but how can I choose hope? What are some things that I could do? Maybe I'm wrestling with mental health. Maybe I'm feeling anxious. Maybe I'm even lonely and depressed because I've been social distancing. And so what are some practical things somebody could do to actually make that choice and execute on it?
Abe, I think you're bang on the money when you say that. We're not the first, and that should encourage all of us to recognize that we can do this. We can get through this. My answer to your question, Abe, isn't as much philosophical as it is extremely practical, and it's informed by my own life experience. And what I mean by that, Abe, is that I was raised in a home with a father who at 8 years old was diagnosed with polio. And at 8 years old, he was taken into quarantine, and the doctors in the ER said to his mom, to my grandmother, we're either going to be bringing your son back to you, or we're going to be bringing you his clothes. They waited in the emergency room and returned my father's clothes. So at 8 years old, my dad was taken into quarantine for 2 weeks, not seeing his mom or dad. It's unfathomable to think what that would have been like for a young man. Fast forward, there's such an incredible story to tell you about my father. Why painting that picture is I was raised in an environment that for my dad's entire life, the cards that were dealt were very difficult ones to navigate through. And the only way my dad found success through life was to recognize, this may sound even a little cliche, Jim, but the saying is that life is really 10% what happens to you and 90% attitude, 90% choice. And for as long as we're waiting for things to get better, we really are processing life through the lenses of out there is going to make it right. And it is an inside job. So how practically we can take hold of the challenge and move through it and rise above it. I think one of the key things to do that I watched my dad do was to be a person of gratitude. Even though he had lost muscle on his entire left-hand side of his body, he had his eyes. And friends, I understand how this can seem trite, but it was my reality, and it informed who I am today. My dad looked at what he had, not what he did not have. And as soon as we begin to, with purpose and with discipline, intentionally take the inventory of opportunities that we have and recognize that all the good, all the blessings, all that is for us as opposed to all that is against us, something shifts. I don't fully understand how that works and all the psychology behind it, but when we find ourselves in a rut, that also tends to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And next thing you know, we've formed habits that are all that much more difficult to get out of. And gratitude is one of the keys that will help us see and then seize the opportunities around us. It is a discipline that we can all do. Perhaps, Abe, it's not something that we're all that, we don't do as often as we should, but moments like these, I think, are really, really great opportunities to recalibrate, reconsider, and then employ some of the techniques that we know that we should be doing all along. So long answer to your question, that for me, gratitude and complaining, both of them are choices. And if I were listening to myself, Jim, I would think like I am an infomercial for posters or something. The cliches keep rolling. But my dad also said, Craig, the glass is half full or it's half empty. And when you look at it purposefully with the vantage point of there are opportunities around me, you know what happens? You see the opportunities, and then you're actually positioned to take advantage of those opportunities. So in simple terms, I would say gratitude is absolutely one of the key components to navigating successfully through these challenges.
My take on hope is also much the same as Craig's, so is well put, is that people that are listening right now, you're leaders. I appreciate Connie and Abe putting this seminar on. And the fact is that as leadership, if we remain healthy ourselves, if you're on an airplane and the airplane gets in distress, what do they always say? Put on your mask first, so then you can help somebody else.
Yeah.
And during 2020, one of my goals for the Dream Center was this, to bring health to our staff and bring health to our clients. But we can't bring health to our clients if we as leaders aren't healthy ourselves. And so I went out and I sought out psychologists. And for the last 6 to 8 weeks, every week, I've had the psychologist come on and talk to our staff. Talk about many different facets of, shall we say, what happens during this time of isolation? What happens when mental health starts to drag you down? But we as leaders got to really stay healthy ourselves. And then this past Monday, I've got a nutritionist, and now the nutritionist coach is on, and we're now starting to coach our staff how to eat properly, how to remove sugar from their diets, how to do a number of things. But I'm really high. And once again, if we look after ourselves and look after our staff appropriately, then they can help our clients. And that goes again with the whole collaboration of what is hope all about. Because if we come in with a smile on our face, if we can rise up above COVID-19 and, for example, do what is expected with the mask, with the sanitation, washing our hands, doing all the necessary things, then we're going to be fine. We're going to come out of this in a good place. So my encouragement is this, that you that are hearing today, you already know all of this. You're all creative leaders. You're all really good at what you do. And that's why we always have this thirst to learn more. And through that thirst, then we become better human beings ourselves, and then we can help others. Hope is really helping others get what they want.
I like that. I like that you come with hope in the form of a plan. When there's plans, people feel at ease. And this is exactly what Abe and I do at Wellness Innovate, making sure that the culture and the leadership are well taken care of so that we can serve people well, so that we have capacity to serve people well, so we can honor others. It's amazing how everyone's intention is to do good. Everyone's intention is to treat people well. And when we don't, it's because there's a messy middle that we're not working through. And I love that you're committed to working and helping your people be the very best they can, especially in frontline work like addiction recovery. There's so many who, in service and to the vulnerable, that people are burning out, even teachers, educators. There's a lot of, when you're on a front line helping people get tired, they get weary. And so this becomes even more important. True. Yeah. And would you say, like in your work with addiction, because I would love to make sure we cover this, you'd mentioned that connection is your approach. What have you noticed about addiction over COVID? Have you noticed any kind of patterns or anything that you've noticed in the Dream Center when it comes to addiction?
Well, that's a really a great question because it has affected definitely our clientele. And are you still there?
You're good.
Are we still good to go?
We are still here.
Okay.
All good.
So, yeah. So the neat thing is that I asked Craig to really handle our chapel in the mornings. And maybe Craig can answer that question, then I can answer it from another
Sure.
perspective.
Sure. Well, I have to say, it's been very unexpected what I've observed, Connie. And since the beginning, this building had to shift gears, as we all have. The mode of operating within the facility was overnight challenged, and pivot seemed to be the word of the day every day, and adjustments needed to get made. And while all of that is happening, and it was happening on a scale unlike anything the organization had ever known, you still have men who had signed up weeks and weeks ago to come into a 7-week program to get their lives on track. And while these men have come in, it was staggering to watch that the observations coming from these guys who had, for this reason or that reason, chosen to go the route of substance to medicate or to deal with issues, they were now almost in a healthier place. And I have to say this really sensitively, because this could come across, this could be miscommunicated. They were now in a place of reconciling and dealing with the stuff that was hidden for so long, masked by abuse, masked by use, masked by their addiction. And they were going to places, they had chosen to go there, while the rest of us were now being exposed in ways that we had never seen, how dependent we were on this to sort of settle us or to soothe us. And others were recognizing that this vice is now taken away from me, or this thing that I would find comfort in no longer exists. And being alone with ourselves was a very difficult thing for all of us to process. And so, Connie, I know this isn't quite where you were going with the question, but through it all, I've watched the men in program almost inspire the rest of us to deal with the issues of our heart that needs to be dealt with. So this is where I want to take it back, Connie. For all of these years that the Dream Centre has been having incredible success helping deal with mental illness, helping to deal with the science behind addiction, helping to deal with the spiritual dimensions and dynamics that go with addiction, one of the core tenets, statements, and overarching themes has been the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but it is connection. And that message now is being almost embraced and understood by our culture in ways that we never even thought it mattered. I realize that's a generalization, but we didn't have the awareness of how important connection has been. And so this has changed the conversation radically, to recognize not only for those that are in the building, but for all of us, how vital for our personal well-being, but for our business relationships and everything else, connection is absolutely key.
Well, I would say that connection is a key, because proof in the pudding was when Imagine Church, and there's many churches that support the Dream Centre, but Imagine Church invited their congregation to drive through in an orderly fashion, pick up a sign, pick up buttons, and the pastors Craig and Stephanie were there, and the tears that started flowing from individuals driving through because they were isolated and now they got connection back to their family. And that connection is, I've talked to grandparents that haven't seen their grandchildren for 3 or 4 months. And the fact is the pain on their face when you have to talk to your kids or do business meetings. I'm like Abe and Connie, man, give me the people. I want to feel the energy. I want to see their smiles. I want to feel the passion. And so I can hardly wait till this is all over, so I can take my mask and I can toss it, so that I can experience once again the dynamic excitement of people and their energies, because there's something about the people business that is so phenomenal. And then that also brings hope, because you can talk people you can feel them, you can see them, you can do some very creative things. So it's very, just totally exciting. And that's why Connie and Abe, what you guys are doing in your business is so important to nonprofits and to other organizations. And just by you giving this opportunity for all of us to get together and collaborate, I take my hat off to you. And it's just a tremendous thing that you're doing. Even inviting us on, we're very humble and with much gratitude. We appreciate this.
Well, thank you, and we really do admire and respect the work that you both are doing, and of course the whole Dream Center. I mean, you're nationally recognized as one of the most effective organizations. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I would love to ask you one or two more questions for sure. One is, in COVID, the goalposts and operational parameters have changed, right? For so many, and you've mentioned it, Craig. We keep hearing the word pivot, which is a challenge. But how do you measure success? As an organization, what are the things that you continue to sort of think about? Because I know from everything I know about you, Jim, that survival is not your measure of success. And yet, we also have to temper our passion and our dream with the reality of what is going on. So what are some of the goalposts you guys are looking at right now?
I'd like to answer the question and then turn it to Craig. One thing about the Dream Center is, even though we're nonprofit, we run the Dream Center like a business. We have social workers, we have people that care about the people. I'm missionally directed myself because I love people, but I'm also a businessman. And we have benchmarks, we have KPIs, we've got outcomes. And what's interesting, on any board, you have those that care about people, those that care about the business side. And that's just the nature of what we do. And our measure of success is two things. Number one is the people come first. If you look after the people and you watch them progress, and whether they, even in our situation, they relapse, there's no judgment. And that is so important to the success of the organization. And then, of course, iron sharpens iron. So if we're held accountable by people that, shall say, donate to us, or the government, or corporations, and we're hitting the measures of good integral part of operating a business and looking after our people. The success is in the people. And as you take a look over the last 18 years, and in the center alone, we've had close to 8,000 men that have come through the center. Many have been very successful. Many have, shall we say, relapsed or gone back in. But when they walk through those doors to come back, we put our arms out and we say, welcome home, because they got another chance to hopefully make it stick so that they can reintegrate, that they can go back to their families, they can hold jobs, they can pay taxes, they can do all the things that, shall we say, people go. So success is dictated to different individuals. My success is different than somebody else's success, because even little bits of success going towards their life, that's what I call successful. So Craig, you got anything to throw in?
Sure. Abe, I again have a unique vantage point where I get to watch everyday Jim influencing a very large culture, and then this place influencing our city and our province. And Jim's priority for success is people and empowering people to prosper. That's can't be overstated. Empowering people to prosper, not using people, not taking advantage. And I know that's a tricky KPI. What's the benchmark? What are the dollars connected to that? People first, and the rest will follow. And he does that, and that trickles through the entire organization. One of the other key things that I think is critical is congruency. And what I mean by that, Abe, there's so many things right now that you and I can't control. Dynamics, as practical as where we can meet, when we can meet, our distancing. There are things that are so out of our control that we need to come to peace and find peace with that. And the congruency factor is, are you being true to your core values? Are you being true to yourself? Do you put your head on the pillow at the end of the day and recognize that you didn't compromise who you are in the midst of all that you are doing and navigating through all of that? So congruency is a measure that, again, tricky to put a price tag on that, but some things, as cliche as this one sounds, are really priceless. If you can do that, you're right on the money. One more lesson, Abe, that I learned from the men downstairs who have walked a different journey than probably most of us on this call, that have dealt with addiction and dealt with struggle in ways that are, in some cases, unfathomable. And there's this prayer that I had heard, and many of us would have some context towards. It's called the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I thought, oh my gosh, why is that being kept by guys going through a program? How come we're not all taking hold of that? And a measure of success, I believe, is to recognize that you did what you can. You had the wisdom to acknowledge the things that are not within your control, and you've got peace as a result of you played your part, and you're just leaving it where it needs to be left at the end of the day.
That'll do.
A great answer, both of you. Thank you. So, we're right on this home stretch here, and I guess just one final question. I'm positive people on this call today, they want to do something tangible to support the Dream Center, the good work you're doing. We know that you guys are doing good work, and so what would you say? How could people support what you're doing? What would be most helpful for you right now?
I think that there's two things. If you're spiritual, say a prayer for us.
Okay.
If you want to do something tangible, go to I Choose Hope and yyc.ca, and there's a chance even a few bucks would really help us, because every dollar that we receive, and we didn't mention it, but there is a donor that will match any monies that are coming in. And
Okay.
so the funds will be doubled.
Wow. So that's amazing. That's great to hear. So it's I Choose Hope, yyc.ca. That's correct. Okay. And we've got that in our chat window. And folks, if you're watching, we know these are tough times. And like Jim and Craig have said, there's absolutely no judgment. But anything you can do, I'm sure would be greatly appreciated, especially given there's a donor who's going to essentially double your donation. And so please take advantage of that. I can tell you donors don't always do that. It's a wonderful thing when they do. And, these folks that the Dream Center is helping, the ripple effect is profound. When you can impact a man, you can impact a family. And when you can impact a family, you can change the whole world. And so folks, please, let's get behind this and support. And, Connie, any final thoughts here today?
Well, Abe and I really love what you guys are doing. And we've been actually really thinking about how can we partner more with the Dream Center, get behind you, bless you, honor you, walk with you. And so we created an 8-module online course, because we're realizing that, again, a lot of companies, businesses, nonprofits, we have this beautiful gift of a reset, and everyone is saying the same thing. We need connection. We need to take good care of our people. A lot of the barrier is how. And so Abe and I created a 8-module online course. It's on workplace resiliency. It's everything we could think of from our backgrounds that people need to know, leaders need to know, people, entrepreneurs, mothers, fathers, just people in general. What do we need to know to be resilient and make it through and not just survive, but actually thrive? And so in this course, we talk about how do you navigate through grief, through trauma? How do you lead people through that? How do you manage the mental health of your team? How do you have tough conversations with honor? How do you communicate effectively? All of this is in this course, and we have decided, because we are so committed to making sure that every business makes it, every entrepreneur makes it, every nonprofit is making it. We want our city to rise up. We don't want anyone left behind. We're making this $97, which, you know, I'm almost choking on my words. And I know Jim is choking too. It's because we don't want any barriers to this. And out of this allows it to be accessible to a single person, or it can be for an entire organization. And we want to give, we want to be generous with the money that comes in, and we want to give a portion of the proceeds, the net profits, to the Dream Centre. And we really want to make sure that we're using what we have to bless and to see the work that you're doing, Jim and Craig. We want to see you succeed and continue to expand and do the things that you feel that are on your heart for this year. And so if you're interested in this, I just want you to email me, Connie@wellnessinnovate.com. And again, it's such a win all around. I've had people almost like not sure what to do with this because it's almost ridiculously generous. Well, that's exactly what it is. It's ridiculously generous, intentionally ridiculously generous.
That's so good, Connie, and thank you for sharing that. So Jim, Craig, any final thoughts here as we just wrap this up here today?
Well, firstly, Dave and Connie, thank you very much for this opportunity. This was a privilege to be with you guys. And unlike you that can share your screen in a beautiful way, I will just put this before the camera.
Love it.
We are doing on July the 11th. This is simply bringing people, family, businesses of every stripe, every size together. Let's walk for hope. Dream Centre, 3 kilometers down to Stanley Park. You can get the details on that domain that was shared, and we'd absolutely love to see every one of you partner with us and go for a walk.
Love it. Just so great.
And, yeah, and my final thought is that the price point that Connie and Abe have put together is just running a business. You guys are giving it away because you got so much knowledge and so much integrity. I hope that a lot of us will take part in this. Great, and our gratitude for inviting us on today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you so much, Craig, and thanks, Connie. And you know, as we mentioned, you know, please do go to ichoosehopeyyc.ca. You know, do what you can. Be generous. You know, every bit helps. I can promise you that. And thanks, Jim and Craig, for your passion here today. And you know, I can sort of, I hope, cut me off if I'm wrong, Connie. I think I can speak on behalf of both of us to say that these weekly webinars have been an unbelievable, a wonderful journey, a wonderful experience. And, you know, we're so grateful for the chance to make an impact. And we are not going away. So you're not rid of Connie and I yet, and Wellness Innovate. We're just going to give you a chance to take a bit of a breather. And of course, we'll be, for those of you who are on our email list, we'll be letting you know about the next one. It'll be around the middle of July, and then another one in the middle of August. And we'll be prepared for a great fall together. But, you know, it's really touched my heart because I feel like we've been a part of a community here every week, and that's the biggest thing. And certainly Connie and I, we're committed to maintaining that. And on that note, I'll turn it over to Connie to close us here today.
I echo everything Abe said. It's been really an honor to serve and to come alongside. And we just wish you every courageous blessing. We wish you every dream that you have in your heart. That just don't give up. Don't ever give up. We are with you. We're standing with you. We're always available. So thank you so much.
It's great. Well, thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week and we'll stay in touch. Take care.
Awesome.
See you guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.